Cuphead Season 2 delivers a lot of laughs, adventures, continuation of lore, and it sets up questions for a potential third season. It should be noted that nothing is set in stone for a Season 3 yet, so all of the support that can be given to the show will aid that. Hopefully. Things are spooky right now. If I could start with anything, I want to start with the highs. Some of my favorite episodes of Season 2, at least of the 2 to 3 times of watching each episode up to this moment, would have to be Charmed and Dangerous, A High Seas Adventure, Release the Demons, and the last episode, The Devil's Pitchfork. More in the season finale later. All of these episodes and more deal with the back and forth between Cuphead and Mugman and their interactions with already built up to characters such as Miss Chalice, who makes a return in Charmed and Dangerous, but also the Devil, Elder Kettle, King Dice, Henchman, Stickler, and I even saw Ribby and Croak within the episode Another Brother. One thing about this season is that a lot of these episodes had adventure in mind and delivered. A High Seas Adventure is everything that I would want in an episodic show. It revolves around a pirate sailing the 7 seas in an attempt to woo a sea beast, Maria, and given that it was a double-length episode, being the longest episode in both the season and series so far, it had a lot of time to set up Briny Beard, but also Cuphead and Mugman, who we see for the majority of the episode, and their individual stances.
A symbol of me enduring devotion, me undying affection.
You talk too much.
The deepest...
But let's speak about the new characters. Speaking of Maria, we get to see her in all of her glory. I'd also like to announce that I would get turned into stone for this woman. She's built up to as this fierce beast who would put her career before romance. And I loved how this wholesome sort of romantic story had a lot of comedic, wacky, action-heavy moments that made it never feel serious outside of a few moments. She comes back again in The Ice Cream Man via Mugman reading a novel that he inserts himself in. Another highlight character was Bowl Boy in the episode Another Brother. That episode dealt with Cuphead and Mugman having an argument and deciding to get replacement brothers. He's an interesting character that I would love to see more of. The line between him being a psychotic, self-aware genius and a random kid with the intelligence of soggy toast is blurred, and it makes for a lot of fantastic work done in the story with the character, because you can kind of do both and it works. A distant third in terms of impactful characters that I enjoyed would be Ludwig, Mugman's snooty piano teacher, who within piano lesson would become so engrossed in Cuphead, not his student Mugman, after Cuphead casually breaks out an improv piece that surprises everyone in the room. For what the episode was, he was functional. I wish the episode spoke a bit more about where he came from, or that the season indulged more in Mugman's side hobbies, because outside of that, he spends quite a few episodes just reading. Ludwig has a great design though.
Ooh, maybe that's your dear friend Chalice now.
Hey, it's me, Chalice!
Let's talk about Miss Chalice. So if you don't know, and I did cover this episode by the way, Cuphead, Mugman, and their new friend Miss Chalice would finish off season 1 breaking into a cookie factory and being found out by the cops. Miss Chalice would display her ghostly ability to phase through walls and leave, and that was the last that we've heard of her. She'd come back in season 2, where initially there was tension between her and Mugman, but also development with her character in general. I like that we got to see Mugman call her out for not visiting them in prison, because within the first episode, despite being a ghost, and despite being able to turn invisible while being a ghost, she never went to visit them in prison, and only came to visit when she was conveniently being chased by an angry mob for all of her scams and needed cover. She gets called a bad friend, if even one, by Mugman, and Cuphead, alongside Mugman, would comment on the fact that they can't charm dance their way into anything, even Elder Kettle's cookie jar. She'd return prominently within Dead Broke, which was a lot more episodic and didn't appear to build too strongly to anything except one thing, but I'll leave that to a future video.
Now these are some world-class demons.
And the Devil? Well, we'd leave off in season 1 with Sweater Off Dead and Sweater Luck Next Time, a 2-part episode revolving around the Devil wishing to capture Cuphead's soul after the events of Carnival and Roll the Dice primarily. I've spoken about that 2-parter as well as Roll the Dice in a Versus, but to recap, the Devil did not receive the soul because of an invisible sweater knitted by Mugman for Cuphead that would eventually be placed onto the Devil in part 2 when Cuphead takes it off earlier in that episode. The sweater would be out of the equation for Cuphead and Mugman, and it left a lot of questions of how the devil plans will go. We'd have Release the Demons, a season 2 episode, where after being so angry that he was outsmarted by a cup, he'd eventually release the demons onto Cuphead, and I say eventually because his anger gets the best of him in this episode. Despite that, it was largely unsuccessful in the capture of Cuphead's soul, due to King Dice's return, some luck, and apparently a fear of Cuphead when he was younger. They showed the devil to have a lot of emotions, from sulking in bed sad, to inferno blazing mad, to completely over it. The most important aspect of that episode, however, is that the Sickler informs the devil that the capture of Cuphead's soul has to happen within 30 days, or the obligation to capture said soul is removed. Things would heat up in the season finale, The Devil's Pitchfork, pun intended, where after Cuphead learns about his soul debt being cleared, would mess with the devil and his pitchfork, which is a stark contrast between his season 1 dynamic with the devil. And again, one of my favorite episodes within the season, if not for the way that it ends, which I'd like to get to at some point. Beyond that, some minor things that we saw more of were Elder Kettle's specific episodes like Rats All Folks, Say Cheese, and Lost in the Woods, which would continue the dynamic of the trio that we saw in season 1 episodes such as Handle with Care and Dirt Nap, and more on that later. Mugman switched to becoming a lot more badass via Dangerous Mugman, a season 1 episode comes back in a High Seas adventure. I think Mugman might have even been the MVP of this season because there wasn't a single episode that I thought brought the quality or the enjoyment of said episode down, which really built up to the season finale. There were some original songs in here and that was pretty cool, but I think a big underrated aspect was the voice acting. Everything from Calamaria, Ludwig, the Devil, Miss Chalice, Bull Boy, or even the turkey in The Ice Cream Man. They were all so distinct but also fit the aesthetic of the show. I also wanted to note that within Release the Demons, we had the devil release the 4 horsemen, and I was so conditioned by modern shows that it's going to have the whole build up a menacing character only to subvert its appearance and or personality trope that I was waiting to see if he would have cute ponies or whatever, be scary or something like that, but no, they played it straight, and these were some of the best menacing designs that I've seen in a show in a long time. However, I would not give season 2 of Cuphead a 10 out of 10, probably closer to a 9 or an 8 if I ever did numerical ratings. It's not perfect, and there is a reason for that. So a big theme of this season was how the bickering of Cuphead and Mugman affected their relationship and the world around them. Jailbroken had them fighting against each other, a High Seas adventure had them fight about what to do after accidentally drifting the sea, another brother was pretty much revolving around them fighting and not tolerating each other. The episode Sweet Temptation would have had Cuphead at his morally worst if not for a few episodes down the line. More on that later. I'm not saying that this take can't change because this is still very early on in my viewing of it. It's practically my first impressions. But I found Say Cheese and Lost in the Woods highly annoying because of primarily Cuphead and how this story is written to rarely let the consequences of his actions affect how he moves through the story. In fact, I would say Say Cheese might be my least favorite episode of the series so far. And I know a lot of people didn't like Baby Bottle, but I would rather watch Baby Bottle for 10 hours straight than to watch Say Cheese again, even though I'm most likely gonna cover it. Lost in the Woods is the bigger offender though, so let's focus on that. The story revolves around Elder Kettle wishing to prepare for winter and thus wanting to collect firewood. Cuphead seems incredibly one-dimensional in this episode, where it became not just predictable, but stale. I personally love that Cuphead is impulsive and takes risks and has that natural charisma to back his bravado, but when it's taken out on Mugman, who in this episode didn't even do anything and was dragged into this mess, it just made Cuphead come across as a jerk. And given that we explicitly had an episode in this season that revolved around how Cuphead should worry more about his actions and how they affect people and himself, it just seemed like a poor execution. Now, one may bring up that in the season finale, Cuphead finally has to deal with how his lack of caring and impulsivity brings harm to the people that he apparently cares about. But I would argue that this doesn't justify Lost in the Woods. You can make an episode that deals with the struggle of Cuphead learning self-control. In fact, they did. It was called Sweet Temptation. That episode is about Cuphead learning that he has to control himself and not get into dangerous situations. And I like that episode, and I don't think that Cuphead comes across as a jerk in that episode. Not only that, but Cuphead is not a static character in the way that he was in Lost in the Woods. Within a high seas adventure, although Mugman wanted to go home, within the middle of the episode, they actually swapped stances, and Cuphead wanted to go home and be safe, and Mugman wanted to press forward and be risky. And I like that. I like that Cuphead can be flexible. And episodes like Say Cheese and Lost in the Woods push him into this one-dimensional box, and I'll speak more about it when I get around to it. Until then, let me know what you guys think about Cuphead Season 2 in the comments down below, and until next time, take care. Off out.